So with Mr. M, we were going to practice a little bit with going to our target bed. He's like, oh, somebody else has been sniffing all in here. Nice job, Max. So anytime my puppy goes and checks out the bed or the target, you can sometimes even just feed over the item if it's not too spooky. So what I mean by that is if your puppy, and I know we were discussing a little bit with Stays with Mr. R a little bit earlier, is that sometimes there's moments where your pups may find certain household items or inanimate objects spooky. If your baby's already showing signs that certain things are a little bit overwhelming, be careful with how you work them, because you might actually make things harder for them and harder for you, but also create more stress than actual comfort around certain things. So if, let's say, your dog was really scared of something and you're forcing them to try to get over their fears by luring them to the scary thing, you could then also be what's called considering poisoning your food or your snacks, and then creating negative associations with that thing and the food. So if, let's say, your dog was scared of going to the tub and taking a tubby, and we can work on cooperative care and all that fun as well, but let's say your dog was really nervous about going into the bathroom and you lured them with a big chunk of sausage or hot dog, and then you close the bathroom door and here we go into bathroom time. Oh, this is beautiful, Mr. M. Good job. Then the problem there is the next time you try to use luring with a nice big chunk of food or even a not so big feast, they're going to start to think that when you lure them, it could be back to the bathroom scenario of spooky. So you want to be very careful that when you end up doing luring, that it's not paired with something scary or overwhelming from the dog's perspective. So right now, Mr. M is doing a stellar job, and just like his buddy, Mr. R, was working a bit with his setup on the mat. Also, if the bedding is fluffy and kind of seems like it could make them warm, some puppies, when they get hot, don't want to go target their bed. So if, again, they're not a huge fan of sometimes softer bedding, especially in the warmer months, you can still do stays or sort of vegging in a bubble, but it doesn't have to be on a physical target that might create some warmth for their bodies. So right here with Mr. M, I might try and lure him all the way onto the mat, or most of it, because it is a little bit small for him. Right there, yes. So let's say I'm going to work a little bit with these stays. I'm going to tell Mr. M to stay, and I'm going to feed him several little crumbs like I did with his friend earlier, and feed that when we're in the stay, good stuff happens while you're stuck in it. Again, we're going to not add tons of distance. We're not going to add tons of other things to this dynamic, because if, let's say, he gets up and wiggles, no big deal. We would just reset him up. He's like, hold up, your feet smell amazing. So if, let's say, he takes a moment and I need to reboot him, I might get that sit, tell him once more to stay because we're starting again, and I'm going to go yes and feed him throughout the stay. So remember, stay is very much so like freeze tag with room service. He's being fed for being stationary, and I'm going to feed him a few snacks while being there. So again, these are teeny little crumbs, so very nice job chopping up his snacks. Kiba says, but I feel like I hear funny noise. Sometimes there are some odd noises that do happen in the building from the neighbors and the trucks and the trains going by. So every once in a while, they might get a little bit unsure. So if we're getting some singing, they're also singing to each other slightly. They're like, why don't we wrestle? But they're in their own little section. So again, we might go out into our bed and right there, yes and feed. So if, let's say in the beginning, he's not as comfortable, we just work going to the target equals reinforcement. So again, bed, and then yes to feed. And then we might move away and then do it again, bed, and right there, yes. So even if he's targeting just his toesies, oh my gosh, chew them. So if he's just targeting the bed with his front feet, his back feet, his little side section of his bum, I would still feed, oh my goodness, there it is. I'd feed for all those little moments because I want him to find there's value in any little attempt at the behavior. So we might go again, bed. Oh my goodness, can we chew them? Oh my goodness me. We're all having a hard time chewing today. Yes. But I want him to, even in the small glimmers of success, do well. So we're going to, again, bring him onto the bed. And then I might go ahead and now see if I can get a little sit from him. Right there, beautiful. I'm going to tell him to stay. And he's like, nope, my brain melted. So if there's moments, just like I mentioned for Mr. R, where they're not feeling quite as comfortable, maybe they're tired, maybe he's a little hot and laying on this fluffy bed seems like a terrible idea. So let's say maybe he's not a huge fan of the bed for a moment. We could get a little sit. He's like, oh my gosh, I'd rather dance. I'm going to tell him to stay. And I might then go ahead and feed several snacks while doing a sit stay. So he doesn't have to necessarily go to the bed if it's a little bit too cozy and warm. So right here, yes. So if I lose him, I try to keep the reps short and sweet, and then I might go all done and get him up and wiggle. So if, let's say, he does a really great job at like 1 to 3 seconds, maybe sometimes it's 1 second. I know Miss K is like, why did you steal my boyfriend? Then it might be 2 to 3 seconds, maybe 5 to 10 seconds. But if your duration goes from barely able to handle about 2 to 3 seconds to all of a sudden 15, and then you're adding distance and all these other elements, you may not get much for staying. So I'm going to tell him again to maybe stay, even though he's not on his mat, which is fine, it's maybe too warm. And I'm going to go ahead and feed the handsome guy for holding a sit stay. If you find you lose him, I would go ahead and keep the reps short and sweet. So very small time frame between each little interval of the food. So right here, I'm going to go all done, and we get up and we wiggle. So sometimes it's much easier for the puppy and for you, do shorter little reps where the time between each snack is very small, and then build into your duration as they're doing well. Right there, I might go, yes, and of course right there, we'll feed. I know he was on it a second ago and I missed him. Right there, nice job. So, but remember, we want to feed for all these little glimmers of success where your babe is doing a really nice job attempting these really challenging behaviors or skills. Because if we don't feed for the attempts in the very beginning, it's almost like, again, you tried really hard to learn your A, B, C, D, but then I said, boy, you're doing a terrible job. Why don't you know them all? And that's not going to help you get any better or want to work on that skill. So the same thing with your puppy, the way you start to ruin training is by not reinforcing the good little glimmers throughout their practice, but then also for being, for example, a little stingy in the reinforcement. And then as well, for sometimes typically only correcting or getting grumpy or overwhelming from their perspective with the things you don't love. So remember how I mentioned puppies and dogs are amoral? They're going to do whatever helps them feel comfortable or safe. This is gorgeous. And that's going to be sometimes behaviors we don't love, and the puppy might be really having a challenging moment. So remember, behavior is communication, not your dog being vengeful or spiteful or being a jerk or a diva or stubborn or dominant. So all these little titles do not help the relationship get any better, because it does create a little rift in the relationship because we view them in a certain manner. So I think language does matter, and if something can't really apply to a dog, then it means that relationship-wise, it may not go in the right direction. But instead, if you look at them giving you a hard time as them having a hard time, it changes the perspective where now you can start to acknowledge, gee, my dog is not being a jerk. They're actually really struggling. And then the way we might behave around them or the way we support them will hopefully change, because for them, they have the capacity of a 2 to 3-year-old human child. I'm not saying they're people. I'm not saying they're little children. But we should use the same empathy we use for small humans and hopefully each other when working with our dogs and our pets and whoever we care for. So remember, if we don't always love the way someone treats us, how would the dog appreciate some of those moments? So I always think to myself, if I would enjoy what I'm doing to the dog, and if not, I probably shouldn't be doing it. So remember that a lot of times dogs, most of their choices are taken away from them. They don't have opportunities to forage on their own, explore, do doggy things most of the time. It's always, you're eating at this schedule. You eat when I feed you. You're having only these snacks. You can only chew at these moments. You're going to bed now. So remember that for their world, it's quite limiting. This doesn't mean that my dogs don't have boundaries or structure, but I'm not intimidating or scary or startling to create healthy structure with healthy doggy-centric outlets. So again, my home is covered in baby gates. I use tethers. I use, so like in my dog enclosure, when both the dogs are out and they're enjoying raw bones, I have one dog on their 20-foot line within the fenced-in yard and the other boy. That doesn't mean 24/7, they're always tethered. But when there's maybe high value resources, I am managing the environment and my dogs so they can be set up for their best success. Now none of my dogs have conflict with resources. We don't do resource guarding. We don't have conflict within my dog's relationship because of the fact that I was very careful with how I work my beauties. So everybody's dogs will be different and have different needs or requirements for their own feelings of safety. But in general, remember, management is not a cop-out. Management is a way to prevent the rehearsal of things your dog maybe is doing that you're not loving, while also trying to set them up for better success in our weird human world, while giving them outlets that might be more healthy than chewing your wall. Here's a particular chew or item that is for you specifically. So, but remember, if you're having a really hard time with your puppy, think to yourselves, did I give the dog outlets that are geared towards them? Did I make sure that they were mentally and physically given something to do that brings them joy versus only me? So a lot of times we tend to go for walks because we're trying to do our part of feeling fit and fun, which is going from point A to point B on a walk. For most dogs, that's really irrelevant. They'd much rather sniff for most of that walk in certain sections. So I'm not saying that we want our dogs pulling and potentially hurting us or hurting themselves, but remember that the walk should also be, or the experiences that we're doing with our puppies or dogs should also be two-sided. So they're part of the equation, only, again, not our side where we want to walk or get somewhere at a certain point, a certain rate with no interruptions. Because if that's really the goal, then do that walk on your own, get your exercise and your goal in, and then do some more leisure walking with your puppy. Because I promise that if you can start to go at their rate, their understanding, and their capabilities, your relationship will flourish and blossom, but your skills with the puppy will also become much more refined and much more reliable. So, but all of the gorgeous guys and gals did a splendid job today for both the programs. But Mr. M and Mr. R are killing it. Mr. R is actually unconscious, asleep right now, and so is Miss K. So they all did a very good job romping and wrestling and doing some of their lovely skills. But again, questions or concerns, come check in. Always drop me an email or send me a text. But in general, the gorgeous guys and gals are killing it. So this is really nice job, Mr. M. So we'll go ahead, and right now I didn't apply this day. We're just reinforcing, vegging, and hanging out. And then later you could throw in that stay here and there when you're ready and he's ready to try it. But really splendid job with all these gorgeous boys and girls, and we'll call it a day for the lovelies. But good job, Mr. M.